Hi, my name's Joel Pertula. I'm the head coach of the boys and girls tennis program here at Oaks Christian School. For as long as I can remember, sports has been an intricate part of my life, and I'd imagine that as a high school coach, sports has played a big part in your life too. In this coach's clinic, Overcoming Adversity, I'd like to offer you some insights and practices that I've gained over the years in coaching athletes through moments of failure and loss. My hope is that they can be a supplement to your coaching experience and enrich your athletic program. So let's get started. It's actually incredible how influential sports are in culture today. In fact, sports are a part of life as we know it, from Little League Baseball to armchair quarterbacks to the world of professional athletes. Sports are a part of our social and cultural fabric. Dr. Jeff Duke, who works closely with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and he's also the author of 3D Coach, estimates that 50 million adolescents will have participated on an athletic team before entering the adult years. That's a lot of kids. That means that the high school coach is becoming an increasingly significant figure in the lives of teenagers. Billy Graham, the evangelist, said that one coach will impact more young people in 1 year than the average person will in a lifetime. With this platform, the coach carries a responsibility of not only developing the athlete's abilities on the field, but also to help shape their character. So you and I are not simply just high school coaches. You and I are influencers. We're role models, mentors, and teachers. As teachers, we're looking for those teachable moments, and they're everywhere in competitive sports, including times of failure and loss when the team finds themselves down and out in a game or after a player has picked up a couple of quick fouls. I've noticed that mistakes and back-to-back fouls often cloud the perspective of the athlete, and they lead them on a downward spiral in performance and team morale. These instances are also charged with high negativity, irrationality, even anger. But regardless of the heat of the moment, a good coach will take advantage of these teachable moments and infuse the proper perspective into the athlete or the team. I love what John Wooden, the legendary head coach of the UCLA men's basketball team, said. He said that the most effective leaders understand that failure is a necessary ingredient of success. Isn't that interesting? Mistakes, even failure, can be permissible so long as they do not result from carelessness or poor preparation. In other words, a mistake or an error can lead to learning when a coach applies the proper teaching strategy into that moment. And this is often easier said than done, isn't it? Why? Because failures on the court tend to take precedence in the athlete's mind and block the input a coach may want to give. It's for this reason that a good coach will have a strategy in place to help the athlete rise above the failure. I'd like to present to you a strategy that I've developed to help athletes rise from failure and mistakes and become overcomers in athletic competition. Let me first form a foundation. In 2006, Peter Senge wrote a book called The Fifth Discipline. In it, he coined two phrases, personal mastery and creative tension. I've taken those two phrases and applied them into the context of athletics. For Senge, discipline is simply an activity we integrate into our lives, like playing a high school sport. Personal mastery is the process of approaching one's life as a creative work, living life from a creative as opposed to a reactive viewpoint. As a coach, the way I translate this is personal mastery is becoming better at what I do, coaching athletes, by thinking creatively and creating new strategies so that my athletes can thrive on the field. To accomplish this, there are at least two essential elements that I need to consider. The first is that the athlete needs to define what's important to them. What do they want to accomplish? What is their vision? Why are they participating in this sport? Practically speaking, the most immediate goal of an athlete who's engaged in a sporting contest is more than likely to win the game. That's why they came. They want to win. The second element for the athlete is to learn how they can see their reality more clearly. Where are they relative to what they want to accomplish? As the athlete moves toward their goal to win the competition or to win the race, a tension is created between their vision or their goal and their reality. And this is what Senge calls creative tension. So the essence of personal mastery is learning how to generate and sustain creative tension in our lives. The gap between the goal and the reality is a source of creative energy. As an example, here's how personal mastery and creative tension are evident on the tennis court in a match play situation. A player may be in a set and they find themselves down 3-love. Yet if the player drops the first 3 games of the set, his reality will not match the perceived goal of winning the match. The gap between winning and being down in the match is where creative tension resides. As a coach, I've often found myself in a position where the gap, this creative tension, has been emotionally charged with frustration, negativity, and disbelief. As a result, the original vision, the dream of winning the match, erodes and it creates low levels of emotional tolerance. Converting these low levels of emotional tolerance into active reservoirs of creative tension has to do with finding the right perspective. Essentially, mastery of creative tension transforms the way we view failure. Failure is simply a shortfall, evidence of the gap between the vision and the current reality. It's for this reason that failure on the tennis court or in any other area of life can actually become an opportunity for learning. That's why mistakes and failures have the capacity of producing perseverance and the resolve not to give up. Coach Wooden said that fouls, errors, and mistakes are part of the competitive environment, the process. Don't live in fear of making a mistake. In other words, mistakes and failures are part of the process. They're not the end of the road. The tennis player who is down in the set needs to learn to master the creative tension within that moment by adjusting his perspective on the mistakes that he's made in that match. And when the player realizes that they're not captive to that reality, they will actually unleash creative tension within that match and have a greater chance of winning. I've developed a strategy for helping athletes unleash creative tension in the midst of failure and mistakes. And I'd like to offer them to you as a resource, something that you can use to supplement your own coaching strategies. There are essentially 3 parts to this strategy. And within my context, a tennis match, I have 90 seconds to implement it. So here's how my strategy goes. The reality is that mistakes happen. The nature of sports is that there are always winners and losers. And as soon as the clock starts ticking or the match is on, the potential for making a mistake is a very real possibility. The trick is not to dwell on the mistake or the failure or the loss, but rather to use it as a platform for becoming better. And that's why I love the way Michael Jordan, the 6-time NBA champion, was able to accept certain realities about who he was as a basketball player. He said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Accepting the reality that we will make mistakes, we'll miss shots, we'll perform to a subpar level is one of the first steps to bouncing back and becoming a better competitor and a stronger athlete. Roger Federer, the 18-time Grand Slam champion, said, "Sometimes you have to accept that the guy played better on the day than you." When I'm on the court, I try to bring the proper perspective into the situation. The reality is that mistakes and losses are inevitable, and the sooner the athlete is able to come to terms with this, the better. Accepting this reality creates the platform to get back up and try again, accept what happened, and move on to step 2. In moments of failure or loss, the coach comes into the situation with a different perspective, often a broader and more holistic perspective than the athlete has. The coach has the advantage of seeing the big picture, whereas failures and mistakes made on the court have a tendency of clouding the perspective of the athlete. It's in these moments that the coach needs to be able to offer correction without causing resentment, and remind the athlete that, hey, listen, the giant in front of you is never bigger than the God inside you. To do this, I typically implement 5 easy steps. Number 1, I engage the athlete. 2, I identify the problem. 3, I present the big picture. And 4thly, I offer a way forward, and I leave that moment by fueling belief. In my own coaching experience, I've found that I can fuel the athlete's belief by developing a set of triggering words that resonate within the athlete. So I use phrases like cancel, cancel, and next, to remind the athlete not to dwell in the past, but to look to the future. I use phrases like be assertive, be intentional, as opposed to being aggressive, to encourage the athlete to approach his contest strategically and with a clear thought of what he wants to do. Someone said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. The final step in this coaching strategy is to encourage the athlete to advance, to move forward by making appropriate adjustments. Mistakes and failures should never cause us or the athlete to retreat. In moments of failure, we've got to muster up the courage to move forward. I like the way that Winston Churchill put it. He said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." As coaches, we can fuel this belief in our athletes. And when we do, they will push through the barriers of disbelief and doubt, and they will compete at their very best level. Overall, this is a simple 3-step strategy. Accept the reality, assess the situation, advance by adjusting, and perhaps it can be a resource for you. In closing, I'd like to make one final comment, and that is that what you as a coach do behind the scenes is vitally important to implementing this strategy that we've talked about. What I mean is this: as a Christian coach, your spiritual reservoirs need to be full. Our coaching capacity is directly related to the depth of our spiritual reservoirs. We can only give as much as we have received. That's the bottom line. We can only pour into others as much as God has poured into us. Our spiritual reservoirs have to be filled to overflowing every time we engage our athletes and our teams. I've noticed, and I'm sure that you have too, that coaching is mentally, emotionally, and spiritually taxing. The coach is just as vested in the contest as the athlete is. We may not be on the field, but we're definitely in the game. And it is for that reason that the coach must be spiritually built up, that they can invest into the athletes who are playing the game and bring their best to the contest. What the coach does behind the scenes, as far as personal preparation is concerned, is vitally important to the success of the team and your entire program. This is where the spiritual disciplines come into play. Classically, there are 2 types of spiritual disciplines: disciplines of abstinence and disciplines of engagement. Both are important in the coach's life. Disciplines of abstinence include things like solitude, silence, fasting, sacrifice, and the disciplines of engagement include practices like the study of God's Word, worship, prayer, confession. I'd like to encourage you today to consider increasing or adding these types of disciplines into your own personal life, because they will become a source of strength for you. God will use them in your life and enable you to coach your athletes out of failure and mistakes, and they'll become overcomers. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope this Coach's Clinic has been a resource and a help for you. Go get 'em, coach.